Hey everybody, it's Beth. Welcome to Infinite Garden. I tried the new Anastasia Beverly Hills Nouveau palette every day for the last 7 days, and I'm here to share my review. If that sounds interesting to you, please stay tuned. If you're new to my channel, welcome. On this channel, we focus on self-acceptance, authentic personal style, and sometimes the expansion of consciousness. If that sounds good to you, I hope you subscribe and stay. Recently, on I think June 16th, 2022, the brand Anastasia Beverly Hills released a new eyeshadow palette, and I kind of feel like it broke YouTube. I've seen so many videos on this, and I've watched a ton. There was part of me that wanted to put out a video right away because I did order it the second it was available. There was part of me that felt like I should film a review video, but there was also part of me that wanted to have some time to play with it first. So I got this palette a week ago Saturday, and I've used it and only it every day for the last week. The palette is called Nouveau, which I think is a nod to the period of art known as Art Nouveau, which existed between 1890 and around 1910. I got that on Wikipedia. And it's often associated with France, although it did extend to other nations as well, including the US. This period of art was known for its natural forms. It's in sharp contrast to Art Deco, which has more mechanized, sharp geometry. The Art Nouveau period focused on organic shapes like curving vines and leaf patterns. I find this particular period of art quite seductive. I do love it. I love it for both its ethereal, colorful nature and also the feeling of heavy iron and heavy bronze in these organic shapes. I think it's very appealing, and I like the idea that they used this period of time, I think, to inspire these colors. You can see from some of these images that the colors do seem to line up with some of the key images from that time. Some will find this boring. For me, I was excited by this because I felt like it would be a great match for me, and I was excited for a new palette to come out that actually really worked with my coloring and seemed to be something that would be flattering to me, especially some of these greens. The greens are very subtle. I'm going to include some swatches here. I'm not really the swatch queen yet. The packaging alerts the buyer to the fact that 3 of these shades are not actually eye safe or eyeshadows, but are pressed pigments. Those colors are Metro, Wisteria, and Paloma. I proceeded with caution and did try these colors on my eyes and had no trouble, but you must make that decision for yourself. The company warns us that they're not eye safe. There's got to be a reason. For me, I've used this for 7 days. I've used those shades on my eyes and I did not have a problem. But it's hard to say how you will experience this. These 2 shades here arrived broken. So rather than return the palette, I just tried to pre-press these shadows into their pans, and I had good luck with that. But this palette did arrive broken and messy, and it's kind of stayed messy. It's not a deal killer for me, but I do use Natasha Denona shades and Pat McGrath shades, so I do personally think that the ABH formula isn't quite up to that level, although it performs beautifully. It is a little messy. I think that's enough of that. So I had a big busy week, and I wore this palette every single day for it. So I'm going to show you some photos I took with my iPhone, just some selfies of the looks I created that I wore out into the world every day this last week. So let's start with Sunday. So on Sunday, I mixed a whole bunch of the colors. I was so excited I dipped into multiple shades. So the first look I created, I used almost all of the shades. I built out my crease with Fleur and Metro, and then I deepened with Muse, the darkest shade in the pan. I definitely used Peacock on my lid and a little Wisteria on the inner corner, and then Belle on the lower lid. I love this look. I think it wound up looking sexy and pretty and smoky and a little ethereal. I was very pleased with this. I kind of liked how it looked with my white t-shirt too. Okay, let's look at Monday. So Monday, I toned it down just a little bit. I was working from home, so I was on Zooms all day on camera. So for this look, I did use some Fleur in the crease, and I did deepen just a little bit with Muse, but then I got into the greens. I dipped into Hope, which is the darker of the green shimmers, and then I used Isle on the inner corner and on the lower lash line. I have a beautiful scarf that includes some of the colors in the eye look, and so I threw the scarf on just to see how it looked, and I was really happy with how these colors came together on me. On Tuesday, I went into the office. I had a big meeting with a senior executive, and so you can see I'm here in my seersucker blazer. It was super hot. I think it was over 90 degrees Fahrenheit. I thought going into this that I was just going to use mattes, but then somehow I went crazy and ended up making one of the more intense looks. I just sort of like lost control and just kept adding more eyeshadow. So for this look, I actually started with Muse and I really blended that out. So Muse is shimmery, and when you do blend it out, some of that shimmer remains. I was able to get almost a complete eye look with just Muse and a careful placement and a lot of blending. But then I decided that I needed to have a little bit more to provide some dynamic energy, and so I added Belle, the bronze shade, on the lower lash line and then on the lid. I really like this look a lot. I felt like it was a little dramatic, but also not inappropriate for work. I think it was probably the maximum amount of eyeshadow I would want to wear into work, but I did like how I looked. I went into the office on Wednesday as well, and on this day I challenged myself to stay away from the darker tones, and I focused just on the lighter end of the palette to see if I could get a nice ethereal look. So for this look, I used Fleur to build up my crease, and then Wings on the lid, as well as Isle, and then I cleaned up a bit with Paloma. I have Isle on my lower lash line. I think this look really did turn out pretty. It's not my go-to. It's a little paler than my go-to. I do like to define my crease a little bit more, but this is also a great effortless look, and I find that very useful as well in my day-to-day life. So it works beautifully for that as well. Thursday, I had a personal day from work, and so I was out doing some things I needed to do, and I decided I could go a little bit more glam since I was just kind of on my own vibe. And in this case, I used Metro to build out my crease and Fleur. On the lid, I got into Lily. Lily is a really, I'm gonna swatch it right here. Lily is a beautiful pinky goldy, really beautiful pinky gold, and I have that on the lid. I believe I also used Paloma. Now with my skin tone, the color Paloma is very useful for me in kind of cleaning up. These are pretty messy formulas and they do sort of get everywhere, and Paloma is useful for me to clean up the edges. So Friday night was a party night and I put together a party look. We had a place to go that night. We were saying goodbye to some friends that we know from the salsa scene, and it's always a good time. There was absolutely dancing. I knew I could wear a pretty glam look last night, so I tried to go as dark as possible. So what I did here, I went in really hard with Liberty, which is sort of like a medium toned olive matte, and I put that all over my eye. I started with a really smoky, deep base. It wasn't quite deep enough. I did have to go in a little bit with that Muse color on the outer corner, but most of my eyes smoked out there with Liberty. And then on the top of the eyes, I used the color Hope to blend in with the olive green. And then I used a little bit of Isle in the inner corner and some Paloma to clean it up. This picture isn't super good, but I did use Liberty on the lower lash line as well. And of course I used the palette for today's eye look. So this palette retails for $55. If there's part of you that's interested in this palette and this color story, but you're not interested in buying this much eyeshadow, or maybe you don't love Anastasia Beverly Hills' formula, which like I said, it really can be messy, I wanted to just suggest an alternate product that you might be interested in. And what that is Natasha Denona's mini retro palette. Now, the Anastasia Beverly Hills, of course, is 12 shades, and this is only 5, but I do think the color story is very similar. You have two mattes in this palette, an olive, and then this kind of light peachy color. And there are 3 shimmers. There's a pale peachy pink, a greenish silver, and then a brilliant kind of cream silver. I think this palette captures the same color story very succinctly. In just 5 colors, I think you can catch the vibe. The Natasha Denona formula is very good, and these minis are $25. So if you're super interested in this color story, but you're not sure you want to go in for the whole big palette, which I totally get, there's a lot of product in this palette, this might be a great alternative. I know for me, I like this color story and I like it so much I was willing to buy both. I can tell you for sure that if I ever have to go anywhere, I will absolutely travel with this mini retro palette long before I would travel with this ABH Nouveau palette. These Natasha Denona minis are great for travel. The formula seems to hold up well. Mini Retro, of course, doesn't contain all of the shades that are in the Nouveau palette, but I do want to compare the ones that are here. So I'm just going to try to do a couple swatches right here. From Nouveau, Liberty, the matte olive. From the Mini Retro, 60s. I think these colors are functionally identical. The only real difference between these two shades, I think, is the formula. From Nouveau, Paloma, the white cream. From Natasha Denona, Vintage Taupe. Also from Nouveau is Fleur. These are functionally very close. I think blended out, it's hard to see much difference at all. From Nouveau, we have Wings, the green silver sparkle. Mini Retro, you have Industrial. This shade is quite interesting. It's a similar tone, just deeper. And I think I'm going to also then bring in Nouveau's Hope. This is more of an olive green. So these don't necessarily match up. The shimmers are not dupes for each other in the two. You know what? Honestly, so Peacock here is the duochrome, kind of blue, sorry, teal from Nouveau, and it has this red undertone that flashes. I do think the shimmers are almost the same color between Natasha Denona's Industrial and Peacock here, but of course Peacock is a little more special because of its duochrome. Okay, let's switch arms. So the other ones that I think compare best are these two. We have Lily from Nouveau. We have Galaxia from Natasha Denona. These are not dupes for each other, but they're very close. So from Nouveau, we have Pixie. And from Natasha Denona, no, sorry, Isle from Anastasia Beverly Hills and Pixie from Nouveau. One more time, side by side. So after 7 days of using this palette, I can safely say that I really like it, and I think I'm going to get a lot of use from it. I don't love the Anastasia formula the most. I don't like it when things get messy, and I can already say this palette is pretty messy after using it for a week. And again, if you remember, these two shades did come broken and I'm using them anyway. I'm sure I could have asked Sephora to send me another palette, but I also don't want to be wasteful. I know I can use these even if they are messy, and I intend to. I think I'm going to get a lot of use out of this palette. I'm also glad that I got this little Natasha Denona mini. I think these colors are useful for me in a lot of circumstances, and I'm excited to have this with me when I travel. And if I want to get a look that this one can generate, which is pretty subtle and light, I might reach for this more than the ABH palette because this one is not so messy. But overall, I really like this palette. I'm glad I bought it. I've enjoyed using it. So for the look today, I'll just talk over it. I filmed myself applying it earlier, and I'll show some of that footage now. So for this look, I started with Metro kind of all over. I got a good wash of it, covering most of my lid. And then using a pencil brush, I sketched in my crease using Muse, the darker color, which I really do think blends beautifully. One of the benefits of the formula is the incredible blendability of the shimmers, and that part I enjoy a lot. It just does lead to a little bit of mess that you just have to manage. Okay, so I got that in all over my crease. And then I wanted to try Wisteria again. I used it a couple times over the week, but I felt like it was a little neglected. So this is one of those colors that is, you have a warning not, both Metro and Muse, both Metro and Wisteria, they warn you not to use them. So I know I'm showing you footage of me misusing this palette right now, but that's what happened. So I put Wisteria on all over my lid, which was very exciting. So I put that all over my lid and then blended that out. I then put Isle, which really turns out brilliant gold, on my inner corner, kind of brought it up toward the inner side of my eye. So I brought that up over the inner corner and then blended it out. I used Belle on my lower lash line as well. I cleaned up with Paloma, and I did blend again with Fleur. I used Fleur to blend out. I think I did, maybe it was even Liberty. I put Liberty, I think, on my lower lash line and a little bit of Wisteria. So I used a lot of the colors today. And this is how it looks. So I really like the look. If ABH really did use the Art Nouveau period as their inspiration jumping off point, if that is the case, I think that they nailed another component of that period, a characteristic of the Art Nouveau period that I find very appealing, which is its sort of ethereal romance. I love Louis Comfort Tiffany's glass work, and the idea of light coming through stained glass I think is also very present here. I think the brilliance of wisteria and the silver green of wings and aisle, I mean, all of the shimmers, they do help to mimic a bit of that stained glass effect. I like to think that's what they were sort of trying to do. I liked having a sultry, shimmery eye, but in a color palette that for me and my coloring looks like the natural colors that are already present on my face and in my skin and in my eyes, that this is just very wearable for me, and it's very much on the vibe that I want to be on. So I love this palette. I really enjoy it. Did you pick up the ABH palette? Let me know your thoughts. Anyway, I hope you all have a fantastic week ahead. Thank you so much for watching. Talk soon.